Are you
Oh,
excited
you
for
should tell it
Miami?
all.
Yeah, we actually might go to a Heat game.
Oh,
Or like the
fun.
Nuggets are playing the Heat, so I feel like that'd be a fun game.
Wait, isn't that who we saw play the Heat?
Maybe, I don't remember.
I feel like we saw the
But we saw
Nuggets
Alex
too.
Earl there.
Wait, have you been following the Somali daycare fraud case?
Oh, wait, I saw you post on X about it, but I was like, I don't know what this is about, but like,
It's like the most insane thing you've ever heard. So like basically, so Minnesota has a lot. This is like the background. Minnesota has a
okay.
lot of Somali refugees. Their kids pop up like hella dripped out, like new Louis Vuitton purse, like new like they'll pull up in a new Mercedes to the mall and like this it used to be this running joke among like Indian uncles in Minnesota. So like for the last like 5 years at dinner parties, they'll be like, "Oh, like the Somalis in Minnesota, they have like some scheme going, like they're like liars
Like,
and
you know the way
thieves."
Indian uncles
You know the
talk.
way
Yeah.
Indian uncles are. And so
Yeah.
like I've always been like you guys are like really racist, like blah blah blah. Dude,
Like the woke Anika tries to like fight Indian uncle at the table and
I
then
could
realizes
totally
she
see that.
loses.
literally the FBI found up to $9 billion in fraud.
It's the same,
$9 billion.
which is the GDP of Somalia. It's the GDP of
Wait,
Somalia.
what? So what are they doing?
So apparently during COVID, like you know how the government injected like a bunch of money into the economy through like different
Yeah.
welfare programs and stimulus checks and a bunch of things. So
Yeah.
Minnesota had like billions of dollars that they basically gave to different nonprofits. So like one was like nonprofits that were feeding people, one was like nonprofits that were like daycares,
Hmm.
and basically like thousands of Somalis in Minnesota, obviously not all of them, basically started organizations. So like there was one called like Feed My Kids or something random. And they basically partnered with like local Somali restaurants to say they were like giving out meals for free, and then they just like cashed all the money up to like billions of dollars for years. And they opened these like daycares and put their own kids as like going to the daycare, but there's no daycare. And it all got uncovered. Like it went viral this week because people have been talking about it. But then this YouTuber, Nick Shirley, basically did his own investigative. Wait, you have to watch this video, Maya. He like knocks on the daycare's door and it's just like a bunch of Somali people that are like obviously immigrants and they like barely speak English a lot of the times and they're like
Yeah.
speaking in their native tongue. And he's like, "Where are the kids? Like, show me the kids." And he's like knocking and he's like, "I want my kid to go to this daycare, like show it to me." And then there's like all these memes where like the door opens and they're just like counting like racks. And my dad has like always been saying shit about this and we're always like, "Shut up, like you're just like making stuff up." And he's like, "No, guys, like, I know it was bad because even my friends started to be like, I've been a doctor for 7 years and there's refugees pulling up in nicer cars than me, like, straight up, like, the newest Mercedes model. And they're like, we still drive our Honda from 10 years ago. Like, what are they doing? Like, they clearly have some side gig going on." Like, it was like noticeable. And they talked about it for 5 years. And now the FBI is like going into Minnesota and conducting raids. And that's why I tweeted about it because I was like, the FBI should have just talked to Indian uncles like 5 years ago.
Wait,
I'm
But
you should
surprised they
go
got
on X, Maya.
billions of dollars.
9
is
billion.
it was like up to like they
Wow.
haven't like sized it completely yet, but they know it's hundreds of millions and they think it's up to 9 billion. And we did the math and like even if you distribute that among all Somali people in Minnesota, it's like over 100K a person.
And they're all just like feeding each other's, like they all have businesses that feed each other essentially.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it plays out because like obviously Tim Walz was like going to be the VP and so all the Republicans are like this is the guy that you almost made the VP of the country and he can't even recognize when like 7 billion, $9 billion went missing in his own state and he's posting on Twitter like happy catter day and it's like a picture of his cat on a Saturday and people are like dude like get a grip. And then Ilhan Omar is like one of our representatives from Somalia and like they have like I would say they have like a really big political block in the state. So I'm curious like what ends up happening. And obviously this wasn't like all of their doing at all. And people have also pointed out like a lot of refugees come from countries where like stealing per se from your government is way more normalized because you live under like a government that you
Yeah.
don't trust at all. Like even in India, like people are more likely to like bribe someone or like steal from the government and not see it as like bad the way an American might.
Yeah, because the government is just as corrupt towards you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that reminds me because like we just saw Durandar in the theaters. It's basically like, have you guys seen the movie?
I've heard
No.
of it.
It's like the big hit Bollywood movie that's like being talked about right now, and it's just about how like they send like a spy to Pakistan, and a line in the movie is just like the biggest thing that you have to protect Indians from is themselves, because like there's like a ton of corrupt Indian government officials that were like funneling like dollars to and from Pakistan and India, which would like fund the terrorist attacks and stuff. But
Really?
yeah, it reminds me of
It's really
that.
good, right?
It's really good. It's really gory. I highly recommend you watch it. Just don't bring little kids or old people to the movie. But yeah.
So on our episode this week, we're going to do superlatives. We did this last year as well, and it was really fun. And
It was a hit.
yeah, I'm excited about these.
Me too.
Okay, welcome back to Get the Check. I'm Maya.
I'm Anika.
I'm Priya.
And we are doing yet another Zoom recording because it's the holidays and we are all in 3 different locations. But we will be back with an in-person recording next week. So don't
Maybe
in case you missed
at a new location. You never
Maybe.
know.
Contract negotiations are taking place right now. There are no contract negotiations. I just wanted to sound like official, like that. Like
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, we have most likely to dupe the FTC, and we're going to be talking about the Nvidia and Groq story from last week. So basically, on December 24th, Groq and Nvidia entered a non-exclusive licensing agreement where Nvidia would pay $20 billion to acquire like Groq's technology, but it's not exclusive. So like Groq can still sell their LPUs, which is their main tech. And they also are doing a bit of an acqui-hire situation where Jonathan Ross, who's the CEO of Groq, is going to now move into Nvidia and other key talent hires. And Chamath famously did their seed. And so, yeah, this is a big deal given that I think Groq's last valuation was at $7 billion just like a couple months ago.
Yeah. It's actually insane. Like the Chamath memes were making me die. But it's actually so impressive. Like the returns that they've gotten is like, was it like 80x, 100x? Like it's insane.
Yeah, and he also did the deal back in like 2017 or 2018, like pre ChatGPT. Like inference wasn't like a thing that was needed at the type of scale that we see now. So I think the deal was purely based on the fact that Google had come out with attention is all you need. People knew that they were going to scale LLMs. We hadn't seen like the results of it just yet, but yeah.
Yeah, super impressive. Yeah, so the terms of the deal, like Maya said, is that a lot of the team is going to end up joining NVIDIA. I think it's like 90% or something like that, including all the key members, basically. So the founder, Jonathan Ross, Sunny Madra, who's their president, and Groq will continue to operate independently with their CFO as the CEO. And I was reading a bunch of articles, and everyone was basically like, that just signals that they want to maintain like the current relationships that they have, but there's not going to be necessarily any innovation coming out of it. And it's very similar to what we've seen multiple times this year with like windsurf and that whole situation.
Yeah. And I think we can get into like why the talent is such a big deal here. So Jonathan Ross originally was I don't know if he's considered like the inventor of the TPU, but was very influential in creating Google's TPU, which we can also get into, but is an AI specific chip for training and doing inference on models. But yeah.
The story of Jonathan Ross was so interesting because basically Chamath interviewed him a few years ago, and I was listening to that interview, and how he even got into it in the first place was he was working for Google as a software engineer on ads, literally not related to anything. Like I think he studied math in college and then dropped out. I don't think he ever finished college. And because
he's not a PhD.
No. Like he dropped out of high school and then he dropped out of college, I believe. And he literally was just in the New York office, and he would have lunch with people that were on the speech recognition team at Google, because that was like the big thing that they were working on at the time. And the team kept complaining, being like, we can't find enough compute. We can't find enough compute. And Jonathan was like, okay, let me like see what I can do for you guys. So literally just using Google's resources, he started putting together like some chip-based ML accelerator, which ultimately goes on to become the Tensor processing unit. But literally the reason that he did it was because he was eating lunch with some guys and they were like, we have this issue. And he was like, I think I might have a solution for you guys. And that was like the birth of the TPU, basically. So that team at Google in New York started using it. And from there, Google was like, oh, this is actually a really good idea. Let's invest some more resources into it. And so ultimately that then became like the TPU team that he went on to like lead. And he is credited with creating both the TPU and the LPU.
That's crazy because I didn't know he had a software engineering background. Like I feel like
on like ads, like the most like normal thing.
I was realizing what's possible for herself right now. It's interesting how Groq started as well. Like Priya, you were talking about how Google's TPU started, but then even Groq, apparently, like investors were calling Jonathan, asking him like what he'd do differently because he did found the TPU or like help start it. And he was talking about like optimizing the software. And then like how he really got sold was by someone saying like there needs to be more competition in AI infrastructure and it can't all be like monopolized. And that's like part of what incentivized him to start Groq, which is ironic now with them being like licensed. And even that part of it where it's like they're trying to get around FTC regulation to some extent. It is kind of like the full cycle of a startup where like you try to create more competition, but now the industry is just consolidating even more.
Yeah. So we can get into specifically what Groq was building, but essentially they designed LPUs, which is language processing units, and they are very different than TPUs, which we've talked about before, and we can get into that. But LPUs are specifically designed for inference. And what inference is like when you're asking a model a question, say, hey, what's the best pizza place in town? And the model answers that question, and it's doing like what they call next token prediction. That forward pass is called inference. And so as we scale models and models become more capable, more people want to use these models and ask these models questions. And so you need to run these models on chips and run inference essentially. And so they decided, okay, we're going to specifically make chips that are really good at inference. And that is because when you're doing inference, you are doing a set of matrix multiplication. So matrix multiplication is like a 2D number array. And so when you multiply one 2D number array with another 2D number array, you get a third number array. That answer leads to like the next token or the next words and stuff. And so what they noticed was when you're doing matrix multiplication, you have an idea of the shape of the matrix of the output. And because you know what the output of the matrix will kind of like what it'll look like or the shape of what it will look like, you can schedule these operations, like these math operations, more efficiently. It's kind of just like scheduling workers or scheduling coffee baristas. Like, you know, this coffee barista is good at this job, you know, this barista is good at that job, and therefore I can make this like schedule really efficiently, and then I can run the entire job. So now instead of having the schedule be on the hardware, it's on the software layer during compile time. And so you have like a better idea of what this schedule looks like. And then you don't have idle time on these chips. And the biggest thing with reducing idle time is you get more efficiency out of these chips and then you get faster answers. And so as a result, with specifically inference, you can get faster answers from your models. And that's what any player is going to want, like OpenAI, Anthropic. Like if you're thinking about like any consumer who's asking a question, consumers just want faster answers. It's actually like rumored that the only reason why Cursor's models are faster than Anthropic's models are because Cursor just spends more money on inference. Like they just spend more money on compute.
Yeah.
And these big players are trying to manage their cost spend on inference chips, essentially.
Like the bigger players are using GPUs instead of LPUs, or like they're both using LPUs, but Cursor's using more of them.
I don't think Groq's LPUs are given out at scale right now. So I think most of the chips that these players are using are all GPUs.
The status quo today is to use GPUs for everything. So like the training and inference is all basically being done by GPUs today. But like Maya was saying, like over time, we care a lot more about getting faster answers and also cutting costs and efficiency and all of that. And so that's why LPUs are valuable. But because they are also static in nature, that means that like with certain models, like it might not be as optimized for those things because GPUs are a lot more robust in that they adapt to like whatever you need basically because it's not like pre-scheduled the way that LPUs are.
So I know like one of their big customers is Saudi Arabia, which makes sense probably because Saudi Arabia has like a way harder time accessing GPUs than like US labs or like US companies in general. Like they have a deal for like 20K chips or something for different commercial applications. But then I guess my question is, does that mean like none of the major labs or even like AI application layer companies like I don't know, Cursor, Harvey are like using LPUs, like they're all only on GPUs?
I will also say LPUs are not economically efficient right now. So like they're not selling these LPUs at a good price. And so part of the partnership with Nvidia is to figure out how to make LPUs economically feasible as well.
They also just like are on super narrow workflows. And so it's like traditionally we've wanted things that you're able to use for training, for fine tuning, for all of those tasks. And you can't use LPUs for any of that. And so it just made more sense to use GPUs for everything, but I feel like we're entering the phase where we care more about optimization than we did before.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's also just like we didn't know what the consumer and enterprise applications would look like. And like when you don't know what the applications look like, then you don't really know what hardware you want to build, right? So you're just going to use the most generic hardware to serve these models. And now that you have a better idea of how consumers ask questions, how consumers want to interact with AI, my guess is that that honestly boils all the way down to the hardware layer.
I also think that when Google released Gemini 3 and it was fully trained using their TPUs, which are also optimized for matrix multiplication and AI purposes, I feel like that is really scary to Nvidia, of knowing that there might not be as heavy of a reliance on their chips and there are other ways to like train things, because it basically seems like Nvidia just wants to integrate these LPUs into their existing GPUs. And so I think that's part of the reason why Nvidia was also like, if we move this in-house, it eliminates the competition that we have there, and also everything can be like served on one platform.
They're also like supply constrained right now more than demand constrained, and so I feel like this lets them move some of their demand off of their GPUs, which like I feel like if they were less supply constrained, then the deal would potentially make less sense. It's like a kind of unique position that they're in as a company, because usually I feel like as a company you're more demand constrained than supply constrained.
I also think they don't want anyone to have access to good inference chips. There is more cost spent on inference than ever before. Like trading, yes, is a huge cost, but the maintenance cost of inference is very high. And so like even if you think about like OpenAI or Anthropic wanting to cut margins, they're going to want to move into the hardware layer over time. And so I think that's its defense against that.
Yeah, and then I feel like from Groq's perspective, besides it obviously being a really good exit for them where it's like double their last valuation, there probably also is a lot of, it's like a capital intensive business. So someone like Nvidia can, like to Maya, your point about like the economics of it, can probably make the economics of it better and make it like more scalable and more commercialized.
Well, I think there's a lot of operations that go into making the chip. And so Nvidia probably can work with TSMC.
Yeah. And the reason they're most likely to dupe the FTC is because they basically are evading all antitrust while also eliminating competition because it's like a non-exclusive deal. So other people can still use the technology, but we all know the truth behind that one. And apparently like Nvidia's also been under a lot of scrutiny. They have like acquired a lot of companies. I feel like I see them acquiring a new company all the time on LinkedIn.
I think also if you think about like OpenAI's like ChatGPT subscription for $20, I am curious to know what their margins on those subscriptions are, or like any AI SaaS subscription that a consumer has, even if you have like a subscription with Cursor. I think Cursor you actually pay in credits, so it doesn't matter as much. But specifically for like unlimited use for a fixed price, like I don't know if their inference costs are below that. I think a huge part of the puzzle they need to figure out is how to bring that cost down. And I think Nvidia doesn't want anyone to take it. But yeah, cool. Moving on.
The next one we want to talk about are prediction markets, which we're naming the moment of the year because I feel like it's all everyone's been talking about the entire year. There's like new headlines about it. And the stats that came out in December were that there will be $44 billion of total volume traded according to Forbes. There's been huge funding rounds for both Polymarket and Kalshi and deals with mainstream media like CNN and CNBC. So we wanted to get into all of those different things and talk about why people are calling it the next frontier of financial markets.
You might say we predicted prediction markets if you've been following along.
Yeah, it was literally one of our first deep dives. Yeah.
Still one of our favorite episodes.
I know, it was so good. I think like for everyone's context, if you don't already know, a prediction market is where you can buy and sell contracts and you basically buy it at the probability of the event happening. And then when the market resolves, you either make $1 on that or you make $0, depending on if it resolves in your favor or not. So like really popular ones this year have been like all the election markets, and also sports betting has grown a lot, which we'll get into. But what I thought was also cool, just like thinking about the whole year, is how like not mainstream it was at the beginning of the year. Like it was only in May of this year, which is like halfway through the year, that the CFTC actually dropped their case against like Kalshi having election markets. And now the CFTC has been on like panels with Tariq and what's the name of the Polymarket? Shane. Like all the founders have been on panels together with the CFTC, and it's pretty clear they've turned a new leaf. And it's kind of like interesting commentary on startups in general, where like a lot of time tech startups operate somewhat illegally in the case of Polymarket or in the case of Kalshi against like a lot of uncertainty until they become big enough that like whatever regulatory body there is in the US that regulates the industry starts to like loosen restrictions. Like I feel like it kind of reminds me of like Uber or Airbnb.
And now I feel like they have so much legitimacy. Like when the New York Stock Exchange, or like the parent company for the New York Stock Exchange, invested in Polymarket, I feel like that was a clear signal of Wall Street and just like mainstream finance, like acknowledging it as a real thing that's here to stay.
Even like CNN and CNBC saying that they're going to use like Kalshi tickers and Kalshi markets in their news the same way they use stock tickers, I feel like is a huge point of legitimacy.
Yeah.
A lot of the funding into these companies, which has been like really large rounds because it's obviously capital intensive to run like a literal financial market, has been this year. Like 87% of all-time sector funding was in 2025.
Polymarket raised $2 billion. Kalshi raised $1 billion in their most recent round. I don't remember what their Series D was, but it's over $3 billion that has been invested just across like the two of them. And like, even with that aside, like Robinhood and Coinbase are both using Kalshi to support their prediction markets right now, but both of them have basically said that they don't want to use Kalshi and they are building out their own prediction markets on both fronts. So you basically have like the biggest players in like the modern democratized finance space, I would say, that are also getting into it. Like Robinhood in their Q3 earnings said that prediction markets was their fastest growing business arm. They were like the fastest to hit 100 million in ARR. And so they like are clearly investing a lot in it. They're actually building out their prediction markets team right now. I saw all of their job postings for it.
Yeah, just for context, Kalshi is both a brokerage and an exchange, meaning you can place bets on the exchange via Kalshi or other apps, but there's still like a market where the money moves through, and that's Kalshi's exchange. And so you can actually place bets on Kalshi's exchange through Robinhood, Prize Picks, Coinbase, I think as well. And then over time, Robinhood and Coinbase, like you said, want to make their own exchange. So I think they tested the waters earlier just to see if the product actually had product market fit with their users. And then now it like makes sense for them to invest in it. This is like similar to having both like the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. Which actually I was thinking about is I was like, what if like there's a ton of companies that have their own exchanges? That's kind of different than the stock market because it's pretty centralized to like a couple per country. But yeah.
And then one thing I wanted to say is I feel like the prediction markets have also had a huge cultural moment. Like there was the live odds of both Mamdani versus Cuomo and like Kamala versus Trump earlier, which was like technically last year, but like towards the end of last year. And Fast Company actually gave Kalshi like one of the best ads of the year with their AI generated ad where they talk about like odds across the history of time.
Yeah, 100%. They also have gotten into sports markets, like we said, this year, and it quickly became like the biggest thing that anyone is trading. I think it's 85% of all Kalshi trades now are on their sports markets. And so in January, they started by bringing legal sports trading to all 50 states. And they started like really simple. It was like the Super Bowl, which happens in February, the NBA and NHL championships. So it was only like the big games. It wasn't every single thing. And then over time, they've gotten into single game markets and individual player stats. They even have like parlays, so you can like put a bunch of different trades together. And then in October, so like fast forward way later in the year, the NHL became the first major league to sign with both Kalshi and Polymarket and give them access to proprietary data. So I feel like sports are fully bought in now. And I like anecdotally have heard so many people that are like, yeah, I watch all of these games just because I want to catch the movements, because you don't actually have to wait until the end of any of these contracts. You can like trade in and out of them. So, and I was at actually like the Anaheim Ducks game when I was home for Thanksgiving, and I literally had Kalshi open on my phone, and it was kind of crazy to see how quickly the market like moved. It was like really cool. So I guess I also got into it, and I did in fact lose money on that deal.
Yeah, like for Priya, she's not like the best at predicting sports. For me, it's one of my many talents. I'm currently leading our fantasy league, so if you want to know what I'm trading on Kalshi, just DM me on Instagram. I'm super accessible. Like there's a lot of ways to reach me, and I would never gatekeep. So have faith in what you originally picked. Meanwhile,
Or
Priya
just
has random guys giving her advice that she's taking, and then like they just absolutely have worse ideas than she had. So
To
They're
translate
like
a little
sending
bit
her.
further.
Priya's getting apology texts from guys being like, sorry that I gave such bad advice. And it's like, literally, as a man, you're supposed to be good at like 3 things, and one of them is sports. Like, is that too much to ask for?
Yeah, that did happen.
Well, Anika, you chose the better advice, which was the algorithm, because you just turned on auto draft. But
Yeah, and then I never looked at it again.
yeah. But yeah, a quick overview as like why sports events contract are legal in all 50 states and bypass kind of like the individual state laws is that it's more of a market where you're betting against each other versus on sports books you're betting against the house. So the house or the sports analysts at, let's say, like DraftKings decide the odds and then you bet against those odds. And so by having more of an open free market, it's considered legal. And it's also supposed to bring in more dollars towards these markets because you now can't get like, I guess, like locked out of the platform. So in DraftKings, if you were like too good of a trader, they'd just literally block your account versus now you're just betting in a free market. You'll never get blocked.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's also regulated under the CFTC, which is the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, the same as the rest of their events contracts, instead of sports wagers, which technically fall under gambling.
And then people in the context of prediction markets have been talking about the death of the expert and the idea that when 5 years ago everyone would trust like what a pollster would say about an election, now you're more likely to look at the Kalshi odds. And it actually all ties to this book called Death of Expertise that Tom Nichols wrote in 2017. And I think there's like some people even like back in the 80s that started talking about this concept. But in the book, he basically outlines how modern democracies like the US are experiencing a collapse in respect for expertise and moving towards a society where all opinions are considered equally valid. He specifically defines the death of the expert as not just like that people don't listen to experts, but they're actually like directly hostile towards them. So if you listen to like what Trump has been saying since like 10 years ago now, he always talks about like fake news, the media is the enemy of the people. And so I feel like this is really interesting. And I was like reading excerpts of the book. I didn't read the whole thing. It's like 300 pages long, but he basically outlines the argument that he thinks this is a really bad thing because everyone's opinion is not equally valid. And now when like COVID came about, people would listen to like random bloggers online over experts. I have like a little bit of a more nuanced take. I think like experts have a place in society, but then the democratization of information is also a good thing. And I feel like I'd be interested in what his opinion. In the book he did not talk about prediction markets because it was like before they became mainstream, but I'm curious if he's done any interviews since then talking about it, because the thing about a prediction market is like he talks about how like you log on to social media and like the algorithm has no incentive to feed you correct information, right? Like someone saying you shouldn't wear a mask during COVID will probably do better than someone saying you should because it's like a hot take and it's like controversial. But the thing with prediction markets is like, and we've talked about this, there actually is an incentive to find truth because money's on the line. So I think it's like an interesting counter argument to what he's saying.
The thing that I've seen online is just that like prediction markets will be the next form of social media because it's inherently more truthful and people will be more happy with that.
Like the next form of media or social media?
Social media, but I guess that is just media in general.
Oh, I get it. Like instead of getting your news from social media, you'll get it from a prediction market.
And instead of from like CNN or whatever, you just like I could totally see like Kalshi's app turning into like somewhat of a news app too, where you like also read a little bit about what happened as a result from the market closing or something.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we've talked about this, but experts don't necessarily have an incentive to be right the same way like a prediction market does. And I don't think that doesn't mean there isn't a place for them. Like, for example, I still want to like go to a doctor. Like my ChatGPT doesn't replace a doctor to me, which is like ChatGPT is more like the democratization of knowledge, or even like Reddit. But I also wouldn't want to only listen to a doctor and not also listen to Reddit. And I feel like the people that are really uncomfortable with the idea of people not just like deferring to experts on everything, I feel like concern me, because I'm like, wouldn't you want like all the information you can get? But I thought it was interesting because like he basically directly ties it to like a factor in the downfall of democracy, that we've stopped trusting experts. Even like in our intro conversation when we were talking about this whole case of like Somali daycare fraud and like healthcare fraud, Elon and Trump and Vance, like all of them have been tweeting about this, being like, our media isn't doing their job. Like, why are investigative journalists figuring this out? And I have a take that's kind of different than Nicole's and different than Trump in the middle, which is like, I think it's really good that there's on the ground citizen journalism that's like not the New York Times that's exposing things like this. And then I still think the New York Times is like a valid form of media that I'm also going to consume. And I think people like paint them as trading off too much, where like Trump and Elon try to weaponize experts is by saying like, oh, it's like the New York Times purposely doesn't look into these things, which I actually don't really believe. And I also think like that's why you should have both, because they'll both act as a check on each other. Like the New York Times acts as a check on citizen journalists that are incentivized to say like, I don't know, the most outlandish things that aren't fact checked. And then the citizen journalists act as a check on the New York Times, where like if experts have a certain incentive or a certain bias, which could be for a lot of reasons, they can like be a check.
Yeah, I agree. I also read like the research that Kalshi recently published, and I thought that was really interesting as well, because they basically, the basis of the experiment was to see like which one is like more accurate. And so they looked at inflation data over the course of like 2 years, which is like something that you can like point to of this is actually what happened. And right now there's like something that's called a consensus estimate in Wall Street, where basically a bunch of experts come together. So that's like analysts from firms, but it's also just like economists at these different places, and all of them come together and give what they think their prediction is going to be. So that would be considered like the expert take, and it's just aggregated together into a number. They do this like 1 week before the numbers come out, and so they also looked at what the Kalshi estimate for that number was a week before it came out, and they found that Kalshi was actually more accurate than pooling all the experts together and coming to this consensus estimate. So I feel like that validates it even more of like there is a lot of information that the general public has, and like they're incentivized to find the truth more than like experts possibly are. So I thought that was really interesting. And like it was basically for all the same reasons we've already discussed. Like everyone has so much access to information now, so there's that component. And the other big component is just that there's a financial incentive that these experts don't have.
I also think sometimes you need a third party perspective on something. Like when I think about tech startups, like working at a tech startup, there's definitely a lot of hires we've done that are like out of the industry we're in, that are just like young, hungry people. And those people, like you need a combination, right? Like you need experts that can tell you how to navigate an industry that you're in and understand it based on like years and years of experience. But then you're also more likely to get out of the box thinking from someone that isn't so entrenched in already understanding the way things are. And the expert example I'll give for that is like predicting that Trump would win is something that a pollster or an expert might find so unbelievable, because they've spent their entire life only talking to like political elite, right? And like understanding things from that perspective. But then like a random person in middle America that's just like frustrated with their life might be able to see it more. And that's why like having both, because like prediction markets still also reflect what experts think too. Like they're still a participant. And then we can move on to like the last part of this segment, which is that we wanted to briefly talk about insider trading, because it's come up a lot in the context of prediction markets. And from what I looked at, the CFTC's framework around this is like looser than the SEC. And I think this is mainly because it's a newer industry. Like I feel like regulation always catches up in the long term, and there are still like some rules. You're not allowed to trade on material non-public information in Kalshi's user agreement. And also when it comes to sports markets, athletes, coaches, and other people that are like directly associated can't make bets. And then there's also like other rules around wash trading, so you can't just like keep buying and selling the same market to try to make it seem like there's activity that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, and that's the same for tech too, like all the IPO markets. Like if you work for like Databricks, you can't trade on the Databricks IPO market.
Did you guys see the Google search term?
Yes, yeah. That is what I wanted to talk about. Alpha Raccoon.
Yeah, basically there's this insider trader who I think works at Google and knew the like search terms, whatever search term data, and like uses that to trade that on Polymarket and made like millions of dollars or something.
Yeah. No, he literally made $1 million in one day, and that was only like one thing, because they found like activity of him trading like over the course of like months and making a ton of money, and they were all on Google related markets.
Yeah, it's unclear if he like keeps the money. He probably does, right? Because it's on Polymarket.
I think because it's on Polymarket, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
I do actually think that Kalshi is a lot more regulated though. Like they have all of the rules at the bottom of like who's allowed and not allowed to trade.
Well, also if you're not doing it through crypto, it's just way more traceable, right? Because it's linked to your bank account. So how would you even liquidate it?
Yeah.
I guess because you can freeze that. I think Polymarket would have to use like USDT or like stable coins to some extent, because stable coins allow you to freeze the money. But yeah.
You know what I was thinking about? You know how there's those like Vice videos or whatever where like they're blacked out, but then they're like talking about being in like the cartel. I want Alpha Raccoon to do one of those.
Hey, Alpha Raccoon, if you're listening, come on the pod.
We'll make sure to keep your identity private.
We could have a TPPN moment for us.
Our next segment is the most questionable purchase of the year, which is Meta buying Scale AI. And basically, earlier this year, Alexander Wang stepped down as the CEO of Scale and joined Meta as their first ever chief AI officer, leading Meta's superintelligence labs. And Meta also took a 49% stake in Scale for $14 billion. And that valued Scale at around $29 billion. Scale has continued to operate, although a lot of people, including our friends, have left.
Yeah, right at the beginning, Scale laid off about 14% of its workforce, and cut ties with 500 contractors, Google most notably, and probably OpenAI reduced or ended their contracts with Scale just because of like the anti-competitive nature.
Yeah, because like they are obviously directly competing with Meta. And the other thing is like there are enough players in the data labeling market at this point, like Mercor and Surge, that a lot of times I feel like people have actually said are better than Scale, primarily because I feel like since they started later, they have like an advantage of assessing the market at a later date than Scale did and specializing more in current data needs. Like Mercor, for example, has like a lot of PhDs because data has moved beyond like Scale AI's Philippines workers doing $2 data labeling tasks. And obviously Scale has moved beyond that as well, but you're probably more agile when you enter the market later to keep up with like current trends. And so they lost a lot of contracts, and then I think your talent just like leaves. Like the few people that we know at Scale have all left, and so I can't imagine that they're having an easy time like hire. Like I can't think of someone that would like try to
want to go to
right
Scale
now.
AI now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the one saving grace to the shell company that's left is the government contracts. They reportedly have a Army R&D contract for about $100 million, as well as a Pentagon contract with a ceiling of $100 million over the next 5 years. And then they also have a partnership with the Qatari government. And it takes a lot to get these government contracts. Like you have to go through pretty long overdue processes, and it's like unclear that like Mercor and Surge even care to go after that. And so that's like their one wedge to stay alive.
I just think it's bearish when someone's biggest customer is like the Middle East government because they just go after scraps in every single industry.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think that like Scale will ever be like what it was in the beginning. I think like part of it is because the entire industry has moved past it. Like at the time, what they were doing was what everyone needed. And it's just like over time, the industry has evolved. So I think that's like part of it. But I also think that when Alexander Wang took this deal and moved over to Meta, like everyone knew that that was the end of Scale. Like it could continue to operate as a company, but it was never going to be like what it was. And Alex has gone into Meta and made like a ton of changes too. Like he clearly like went in with a mission of like taking it over.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the Meta side of the deal, like why Meta did this and how it's played out. So Meta basically wanted a locked in data supply, and then also everyone thinks that they're pivoting to closed models from open source models. And so they needed, in order to do this and like create a model that's at the cutting edge of AI, which they haven't been, like OpenAI, Google, like they haven't really been at that level of competition, I would say, with their models. They obviously need a data pipeline. And so Scale was already a vendor, and I think it just made sense to like take a stake into it, also get Alexander Wang's leadership. And it's obvious that Zuck was willing to pay basically any price because at the same time, you had these pay packages that were like hundreds of millions of dollars for people from all the labs to basically work at TBD Labs, which is now called Superintelligence Lab. What's it called now?
TBD Lab is like one team of the Superintelligence Lab. So there's like 4 parts, which is TBD Lab Fair, which is like the old team, the products and applied research, and then the MSL Infra, which is the team to sustain like artificial intelligence models, just like the infra for these to serve these like AI models. I think the 600-person cut was both from Fair and the infra. And it makes sense that it's from the infra because like no one's really using Llama right now. Yeah. So I can see why it's like not super useful.
Yeah, and then on Meta side, in terms of why we think this might have been a bad bet, it has created a lot of chaos internally in Meta. So on the 12th of November, Yann LeCun, Meta's chief AI scientist who joined in 2013, so this was like way before, Alexander Wang basically leaves. And there are a few reasons. I feel like one of them was philosophical and one of them was political. So the philosophical reason was he was pretty vocal about the fact that he thought the entire AI industry is chasing a dead end, and he basically has a lot of credibility in the industry because he's won a Turing Award. He did foundational work on neural networks. He's considered like one of the AI godfathers, and there's only like three. But his take is basically that LLMs is never going to be what reaches AGI because LLMs don't understand the physical world, which like makes sense. He gives the analogy of a toddler that like understands how to walk and navigate its space and pick things up. And an LLM, even if it's trained on the entire internet, still can't do that. And so that's basically his take. And then the philosophical thing feeds into the political thing where like once Alex joined, Yann LeCun was reporting to Alex and he probably didn't want to report to someone that basically had a completely different philosophy than him. And so he announces he's leaving. And then actually this month, his new company was like he confirmed his new company that people had thought he was going to do for a while called Advanced Machine Intelligence that is more focused on creating AI that understands like physical spaces in the world, which is called like a world model.
Yeah. I will say like other famous researchers also think similarly of what Yann LeCun thinks, like both Andre Karpathy as well as Richard Sutton, who's like the father of RL, also believe that like LLMs is not the path to AGI and that we have to go and that like the next era of like LLM and model development or just like AI development will go back into research. So like from what I understand, at least in the podcast that I'm hearing, and like the tweets that I'm reading is that like over time, like spend will slow down on the current LLM infrastructure and then spend will increase back into research because we'll quickly realize that LLMs will not get us there. But yeah.
Yeah, but Yann LeCun's startup has already rumored to be raising, like it is not announced and it's not clear the deal's gone through yet, but they're raising at 3.5 billion. So like Maya said, there's other people in the industry that are aligned with his perspective. And I would also say it reminds me of the conversation we had with our friend Amir that's basically building like open source agents. And he was saying the same thing where he was like, OpenAI, the way it's currently approaching LLMs is never going to be what reaches AGI. And I'm not enough of an AI researcher to have a truly like full baked take on this, but I will say like the take that LLMs are not going to be what reaches AGI does make sense, and I feel like it'll have to involve agents or like some more advanced form of AI than what we're seeing right now.
I agree.
Basically, like Chris Cox is Meta's CPO, and then Andrew Bosworth is Meta's CTO. And they're way more focused, I think, on Meta's products. And so there's a lot of rumors that Alexander Wang has been like beefing with the two of them because they in meetings were like, why can't you use Instagram and Facebook data to help Meta's new foundational AI model, like the same way Google use like YouTube, which isn't like a bad idea. But basically, I think Alex's perspective was like they're thinking about everything in terms of product, whereas like he's kind of from first principles being like, how can we create the most cutting edge AI model? And I think when you think about their roles, they both make sense because it's like Alex joined Meta to basically create a breakthrough model, whereas like Meta's CTO and CPO are probably concerned about Meta's balance sheet, and investors have been super concerned about Meta's level of spend, and they've been asking like where they can see the payoff in like recent earnings calls, and Zuck is kind of just like, you'll have to wait and see, which is not really what an investor wants to hear, whether it's
They've
true or
also
not.
like taken a lot of big bets. Like the metaverse didn't work out. Like their AR VR is like not working out. And so this is like their next big bet, especially if you're going to be hiring all of these people for like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like at some point you need to have some return because we're also not seeing like Instagram or Facebook grow at like what they were growing at before. And so I feel like there is honestly a lot at stake for Meta as a company in like all the money they're investing in this because it's like you only get so many chances to prove yourself.
Yeah, and I think Meta AI has like 1 billion users or something, but then from investors' perspectives, and I would agree with this, they're kind of like, okay, you just have like Instagram and WhatsApp and Meta users, and then you're like reporting them as users of your AI, but it's not reflective of your AI, and they'd be on the app anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've never used like the AI features on Instagram.
I've used the Messenger AI features before. But like,
what is that?
Like you can just be like at Meta and then like tell it to create something, but it's like not that good, and you'd only use it because you're in Messenger to begin with, like trying to be funny in a group chat. But like,
where are you trying to be funny to?
It like pales in comparison to like Nano Banana.
Okay, I guess we're not getting an answer.
Oh, well, I feel like you know the answer.
But yeah, all this is to say that they're all trying to build towards Avocado. That's the rumored new AI model, and it's supposed to not be open source. So they're moving away from open source because clearly it's not making them dollars. And yeah, it hasn't been released. And I was actually checking like the Kalshi prediction markets on this, and it's like kind of funny because they like peak at like 40 or 50% on whether or not Meta is going to release another model, and then it just slowly like drops off over time down to 0% as of right now, or like 1 to 2%. So for this year, yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
I mean,
even in January, but yeah, people thought like I think people really thought that Alexander was going to turn things around, and it's kind of concerning that in the last 6 months they haven't been able to really push an update.
Yeah, I also think that when they do release it, it needs to be good. So
yeah,
it's better to take your time than like release something that's like not.
The other interesting thing is that they're spending a lot of money in data centers and AI infrastructure. So they planned around $65 billion in capex for 2025 for expanding their data center footprint. Part of this is definitely supporting like Instagram and Facebook serving, but part of it is also for AI infrastructure. And I'm like, for what? Like, who's using it on Facebook? But I guess they'll be ready.
I mean, Anika's using
when they
it.
get, yeah. But if you like compare it to like Google is spending like 91 to 93 billion dollars, like Amazon spending 100 billion dollars. So you're like not far off in terms of amount of spend and very far off in terms of like usage.
Very far off. Yeah.
But yeah, they will be ready. But yeah, and this is also in conjunction with like Google and Meta's deal on Meta using Google's GPUs internally.
Yeah, and then I don't know how deep you guys want to go into this. We already kind of talked about the data labeling market, but basically, like Mercor has had a really good year.
I always think back to like when Trey was telling me about Mercor's Series A, and he was like, Maya, you have to join them right now. Like, you have to quit your job right now.
Would have been a good bet.
Should have listened. It's okay.
It's okay. Mercor did have a really good year. They raised their Series C, which raised their valuation to $10 billion. And I also think a big part of what was really beneficial to them was this whole like scale AI deal. I feel like without it, they probably wouldn't have they still would have done really well. But after OpenAI and DeepMind cut ties with them, they were like the next best option. And so I feel like it was like really big for them.
Yeah, and Surge AI, which is their main competitor, I think is covered in the news slightly less just because they're not VC backed, so they don't get the benefit of like these huge funding headlines. But that's actually probably better for them because their employees own probably way more of the company, and they've surpassed $1 billion in revenue without raising any outside capital because the founders just like had a ton of money already. And they're in talks now to maybe raise their first round ever at around $1 billion of capital and a $15 billion valuation, if not up to $30 billion. So yeah, it was definitely good for both of them. That Scale, which was the historic leader in the industry, got like basically disassembled by Meta. And I think like zooming out, when I think about data labeling, there's like the data that existed, which was the internet. There's the data that we created in the beginning, which was like Scale AI with people in the Philippines. There's then this expert layer, which is like Mercor hiring PhDs. And then to me, I feel like the next wave will be related to humanoids, which we're actually talking about next, coincidentally. But like the physical world, kind of like what Yan LeCun was talking about. But that like people have started gathering data, but a lot of the data has actually been gathered by the humanoid companies themselves, which means that no one has like kind of commodified it. Or I'm sure like Surge and Mercor have obviously thought about it and are probably already doing it to some extent, but I think that will kind of be the next wave. And I think there's some people that think synthetic data will be the next wave, but I feel like manually collected humanoid data will happen for a while before synthetic data replaces it, just because I think AI still has too many hallucinations and like biases to create reliable synthetic data, if I had to guess. But that is like an open question, because like you remember when we were talking to like one of our friends who like was looking at investments in the space, and then she was like, oh, I think like synthetic data means like none of this will matter really soon. But I feel like, to me, I don't think that that'll be a near time horizon.
Yeah, and that's also like when I was doing research on our next topic, which is humanoids, like there were also a lot of things that said that there too, where you just like can't account for the edge cases necessary, even with like all the synthetic data generated in the world. And so you need like real data.
It's also like synthetic data is just gonna, like, every bias that exists, for example, like if some edge case isn't accounted for, I feel like synthetic data just like reproduces data without edge cases accounted for.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings us to our biggest letdown of the year, which we said is the Neo humanoid robot, which is this 66-pound humanoid robot from a Norwegian American.
Dude, it's 5'6", 66 pounds. It's so skinny.
Skinny. Wait, I was gonna make
Skinny
the same joke
legend.
too.
Yeah, it's on Ozempic.
I actually thought it was like 4'11" or something like that, and then I realized they just like have a bunch of really tall white people in all of their ads. Because I like really thought
It's
it
a
was like
Norwegian
4'11".
company. Everyone in Minnesota is Norwegian. They're either Norwegian or Somali refugee. Yeah, it's like it's literally one of the two, and then there's like the one Indian family that was us. But basically, this humanoid, what's different about it is it's B2C, which is pretty cool. And it's supposed to just like do tasks around your house, like fold your laundry, clean, water plants. It's basically like a 1950s housewife. And it's supposed
to do these things.
Yeah. Well,
hey, it actually does do these things.
Not really.
Just with someone on the other side.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, I guess, should we go into the tech?
Yeah. So basically they have vision-based, like camera first, like they don't have LiDAR. But vision-based images, and then they have two models, which is a world model and the Redwood AI model. The Redwood AI model is just their model for planning and making decisions and doing things. And then their world model, it's not actually used in deployment. It's just used to create all these like different situations that could happen in the home. Because the problem that the space is facing is that we don't have a ton of data on what happens in your home. There's not a lot of like recordings of like you putting the trash away or you taking out trash and stuff, and all the different environments that can arise in your home environment. And so like what they do is they like take a 10-second clip and then they generate like thousands of different scenarios that could happen. So like, let's say you're looking at the plant, like maybe the plant tips over, maybe you want to water the plant, like things like that. And so this is like their way of creating synthetic data to like come up with all the different possibilities and then have like the robot react to these possibilities. And so that's basically their tech. And then the reality is that it doesn't work, or it like works in very, very contrived situations.
I mean, it's still like in training. Like, I feel like I wouldn't say that it doesn't completely work, because they are definitely missing a lot of data that is necessary to train these models. And so they do say that Redwood AI, which is the vision language model, is still in training. And when the task gets too hard, then one of the 1X employees will take over and guide it. But the goal is ultimately for the model to be sophisticated enough that they're able to do anything by itself.
But like every task is too hard. Like when they're talking to journalists, the only task that did by itself was open your door or pick up your glass of water.
Wait, it's so funny because like you can schedule it to do like other tasks. So you could just be like, oh, I wanted to fold laundry, and then it's like someone will fold your laundry via the robot. But you have to schedule it. So you can't even like ask it real time.
It's basically like all of Silicon Valley is going to have like the same people that Scale AI just laid off in the Philippines now operating their Neo robots. But anyways, I feel like it still is, even if you have people abroad, probably, I don't think it's actually employees of the company doing it. There's just absolutely no way. It's definitely like, I swear it's the same people that were working at Scale prior.
Well, it's like housemaids, like. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I think what's important to note here is they made it seem like they launched the product, but they actually did not. So there's a pre-order list that you can get on and you have to pay $200. But then the first humanoids are supposed to ship in 2026. And I feel like that's important to note because historically when tech companies like Apple and stuff have done releases, it's usually that the product is actually coming out. And so Marques Brownlee, who's like the most famous tech reviewer, he pointed this out, which is like a lot of tech companies now need to make it seem like they're releasing their product before their product actually works because they need to collect data. So there's going to be like first users or early adopters of this humanoid robot that basically give the robot the data it needs to actually work long term. And so those people are just going to have to be okay with like someone in a developing country peering into your house and then doing things for you, which I think a lot of people, like, for example, I feel like Priya would be totally fine with that.
Yeah, you also like can give it zones where it's like not allowed to go into, or like before
Like
it
your
does
bedroom.
like your bedroom, or every task before they do it, you have to like give it approval to go do the task because like you have to know that it's probably going to be a human looking at it. But unfortunately, the price point is a little too high right now.
20K, which isn't that bad.
Well, I think it's just like if you already pay like 40K for a housekeeper, paying 20K for a robot housekeeper is like actually better. Like it saves you money in a way.
How much do people
Which is
pay
like
for a cleaner? Like 500 a month, and then this also costs 500 a
500
month.
a month. Yeah.
so I think like it's like I actually think it's like totally reasonable. So this is like my take on it, which is like the Wall Street Journal tried to do like a version of a hit piece, but it wasn't really a hit piece because it was kind of like it was like in partnership with 1X. But anyways, like they just tried to basically like out them
It's
and
an
be like,
expose.
oh yeah.
Some might call it an expose.
Yeah. To be honest, like the market reaction was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like having a humanoid in your home as of right now seems like way too fast. Because if you look at like where all the other humanoid robots are, they're in these like factory facilities, they're heavily monitored, they have like specific like tasks that they need to do, and it's like way more set in stone. So for example, Figure deployed like a bunch of Figure 2 robots in the BMW factory, and it's like there's clearly like this part that it needs to do. And so like just like the dynamic environments, everyone knows like the data isn't there. So yeah, I see like the point, but then also like when you buy this thing, it tells you like what you're buying. So I don't know. But long story short, I really don't think it was like that big of an expose that they did. I just think that it was something for the headlines.
A lot of the people that buy it are also going to be Silicon Valley founders that are fascinated by the tech to begin with and are okay with it not necessarily delivering 100%. I also think it's interesting to look into why this has been such a hard problem to crack, and even like simple decisions like the form factor were pretty controversial, where a lot of people thought that a human actually is not the best form factor when creating a robot that can do chores. I was reading about something called the Moravec paradox. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was like named after Hans Moravec, who was a pioneer in the field of AI back in the 80s. And what he found was that computers are good at things that we find hard, like math, chess, logic, and then they're bad at things that we find easy. So like recognizing someone, moving in a space, understanding like emotions, like when we've talked about voice AI, like AI is really bad at tone. And it's basically because our bodies and brains evolved over centuries to do all of those things, but our bodies and brains did not necessarily evolve the same way to do math. Like if you think about, since we were like hunters and gatherers, what we were spending our time doing, it was like moving and like more animalistic tendencies. And we also have like touch along like our entire body, whereas like the humanoid doesn't. Like we even learned about how they had to start putting like cameras on the humanoid's hands because like we just like move our face, right, to like see where our hand is going. We wouldn't even think about that, but some of these humanoids, I think it was Figure that put cameras on hands, which is a competitor to Neo. Like that was actually a problem they had to solve, of like just like spatial recognition or the ability to grab something, or like
yeah. And it's kind of like the same trajectory that we've seen with self-driving cars, and like the same issues that you run into with that, because like there's like human things that you do to look in like your peripheral or like whatever it might be that we just like know how to do. And when you're training a car to do it, I feel like they had a similar rollout where there were people like in these cars that were like mapping everything out, and they've like gotten that data from scale, from themselves, from all of these like little robots that have gone over the streets over time to collect it. And so I think like the rollout that they've taken and the approach makes sense when you think about like other things that are similar that have had to do this in the past.
The other thing that the industry has like reacted with is like, oh, why'd you go straight to the home? Because all the humanoids are like being deployed in factories right now or other commercial settings like businesses and stuff. And it's important to note that like the Neos are actually getting deployed in, I think it's like EQT. It's a global private equity firm, and they have like portfolio companies of like different small businesses, and these like robots are going to be deployed in those small businesses, and like the equity firm, the the private equity firm is like willing to invest in it, I guess. So I think they're all doing it in conjunction, and they're just trying to get like first movers advantage in terms of like the brand and stuff. But everyone agrees that it's going to go from factories to commercial businesses, or like, I don't know, like your dry cleaner, for example, to then going into the home directly.
I can't wait. We'll definitely have a humanoid robot in like 10 years.
It definitely will take 10 years. I just think about like the Waymo trajectory, and I feel like it's going to match that.
Yeah, which is
we
totally
don't even
fun.
have like B2C Waymo yet, which is kind of surprising to me.
Well, like Tesla,
yeah,
FSD
but you can't like,
is,
buy
the
a
closest
Waymo.
thing.
Yeah.
Ever since I joined Open Evidence and have been taking Waymos, I realized how terrible Ubers are. And today, my Uber driver was the meanest human being ever.
Oh, because you're in Florida.
Yeah,
dude,
it's actually
oh my
because
gosh,
you're in
the Florida Uber drivers are crazy.
Insane.
They're insane.
They're out
I'm like
of their
surprised
mind.
I'm surprised they get away with this shit. I was like, I want a refund on this drive. Like, I literally bought Starbucks, and she was like, you cannot come into my car. And like, I would have normally just like waited for the next Uber, but like this was 30 minutes deep into Ubers canceling on me. And so I was like, what? I was like, I actually just like have to take this Uber. So I like threw away this like Starbucks that I just ordered. And then she didn't even drop us at the location where we were supposed to go to. And I was like, this is just ridiculous.
Maya, you have to hear this story. When we were in Miami, literally, we were at the airport. The Uber driver picked up the wrong person, a different person in the car. I messaged him and I was like, hey, so I just saw you drive away with a different person in your car. By the way, like, can we just cancel this ride or whatever? And he was like, no, I'll come back and get you. And I was like, no, like, let's just cancel the ride. And then he was like, I called a different like Lyft or something like that. We get in the Lyft. This Uber driver does the ride by himself, like doesn't cancel the ride. Like, I'm not in the car, goes from where I am at the airport to Varun's apartment and charges me for the ride, but no one's in the car. I wasn't in the car. Like, he picked up the wrong person.
Did he
I tried to get a refund and Uber was like, sorry, no refund, no can do. I literally just paid for it.
Oh, what?
Oh my god.
Like, I never got a refund for it. I was just like, I'm not going to charge people for it. It's fine. Like, I'll just pay the $40.
Oh, I definitely would like tweet at Uber and like be like, fix this now. Like, I would do everything to get that $40 back.
We know, Maya. Put up posters.
It's the principle.
Maya would put up literature, not the literature. Wait, you know when I got to my parents' place in St. Pete, which is also Florida, I was like taking Ubers and they were like all $8 regardless of where I was going. And I was like, I can't believe Ubers here are so cheap. What a steal. And I realized I figured out very quickly why they're so cheap. This one woman, I've actually never feared for my life in a car more in my entire life. And I was the whole time debating if I just tell her to pull over and get out of the car. On the highway. Insane. We were on the highway and I was like, should I just tell her to pull over and get out? She was on a drug, like, for sure.
That's insane.
It's honestly all the service in Miami. Like, when I went to get my nails done, they acted, well, it was my nail because one nail had fallen off. When I showed up at the nail salon, you would have thought that I showed up at an airport and asked to get my nails done. Like, they were so taken aback that I would ask them that, as if like I asked someone on the side of the street to do my nails and it was like, they were like, you want us to do your nails? I was like, does not say fucking nail salon. It was insane. And then I was like,
Miami's crazy.
I was like, I don't get this. Anyways, we have a Jeep Wrangler. It's a lot of fun, and we're not taking any more Ubers.
Wait, that's
that is really fun.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you guys are going to, what is it, the Keys?
Oh, I love the Keys.
We're going to the Keys. Yeah. And because we have this like Jeep, like it's gonna be so fun because we'll have the top down.
Wait, that sounds so fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. Did you get an Oura ring?
About the top down these days.
Oh yes, I got an Oura ring. It's like too much stimulation for me.
What?
I feel like you'll get used to it. No, I get it. Okay. You'll get used to it. Don't worry. like you'll forget about it.
Okay. Cause like Priya's reaction was like, "What do you mean?" And then Anika was like, "I see you."
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I definitely play with it. It's like something to do when you're bored.
Oh
like,
my god, you guys would crash out over the Spinelli with like the moving rings.
Oh yeah,
no, that actually seems like a fidget toy. Like I actually when I saw the Spinelli was like, I can't afford it, but it could be good for me if I could.
Well, okay, I always play with my bracelet, and now I'm always playing with the Oura ring. So
yeah.
But yeah,
right.
I don't really know. Oh wait, yeah, okay, yeah.
Keep going. No, keep going. What did you want to say?
No, I was gonna say like I don't really know what to feel about these sleep scores. Like, am I gonna fix it? Not really. But is it more information for my head? Probably.
You have bad sleep scores?
No, I just have like average sleep scores. Like they're like 85.
Wait, that's
82.
great. 85 is totally fine.
That's good.
Yeah.
Just wait until you get a 30. That one will hurt.
Oh, I got a 20 because I took a red eye.
Oh,
so.
yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can learn a lot about people from their sleep scores.
Okay.
Right.
Bye.
I'm done with you guys. Bye.
Oh my God. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.
Happy New Year. Bye.